Everyone, it's Mr. Miles. It's Tuesday, March 14th, so I'm going to make a quick video about counter arguments, and I'm going to try to, as quickly as I can and as clearly as I can, kind of explain real quick how to do a proper counter argument, because it is a very important part of an argumentative essay, and it's a part that a lot of people forget about when they write an argumentative essay. They're so used to the intro, body, conclusion structure that they forget that when I'm writing an argumentative essay, I am trying to prove a point. I am trying to persuade someone to my side. And so persuading someone to my side means that I have to consider the opposition. I have to consider what the other side might say to me. If I were having a debate, like face to face with this person, right? Obviously, we're not doing that. This is not a debate. But you have to imagine that you are having a debate with this person, right? So like maybe I can't talk to that person and dialogue with them about this issue, but I can anticipate something that they might say about it. And so if I know that there's somebody who disagrees with me about something, I might anticipate or expect or predict what argument they might come up with. Okay. So that's the whole point of a counter argument. Okay. It may not be the cornerstone of your essay, but it is definitely part of the foundation of your essay. And if you don't have that, then you're on rocky foundation. So what do I do? So if you look at the writing resources and links topic over here on the left-hand side of your Google Classroom, I posted three little links and PDFs here that you can use. So this one is a website that kind of goes on the mile-high view of what a argumentative essay as a whole looks like. So kind of gives you some helpful tips about just as a whole, something that you can do. It does mention the counter argument a little bit and kind of boils it down for you into kind of 3 points. So like, identify the naysayers, or represent objections and answer objections. So that's probably a good place to start before I kind of dive in any deeper into what a counter argument does. So the first point they tell you is to identify the naysayers. And what they mean by that is what is the stance, okay, of the opposition, right? So if you're writing this essay and you say Thomas Paine and Patrick Henry are the two most effective, then obviously the opposition will say, well, no, Thomas Jefferson's Declaration of Independence is actually better. So I have to anticipate what they're going to say. And then piggybacking off that, I get to the second part, which is I represent the other side fairly, okay? It is incredibly easy to come up with really bad arguments for the other side that you can easily shoot down, right? Oh, well, I don't know. People might be people might be for cigarettes, smoking cigarettes because they look cool. Well, I can easily shoot down that argument because that's a bad argument. Because okay, looking cool doesn't really matter when it comes to your long-term health, right? That's an easy argument to shoot down. That's not their best argument. Okay, so what it means when it says represent their other side fairly, I mean, don't just come up with a straw man that you can easily just blow down, right? Like try to come up with a really solid argument that the other side might have. So for example, if we're talking about, why smoking cigarettes might be a positive thing, maybe they can say, well, and I'm not entirely sure if this is true or not. I'm just making this up as I go. Studies have shown that nicotine helps to reduce stress. So it might be a coping mechanism for many people who have to deal with lots of stress at home or whatever. That is a much stronger argument that I actually have to think about how I'm going to respond to that than just, well, cigarettes look cool, right? So I have to represent their objections fairly. I have to really avoid just coming up with a really easy argument from the other side that I can very easily knock down, okay? Your job is to pick their best argument and say that even if this is their best argument, and I might even concede that they might even have somewhat of a point, it's still not good enough, right? That's what a really strong counter argument does. And so that leads you straight to the rebuttal, okay? Or the refutation, all right? So the rebuttal is where I say, here is the best argument for the other side, for the opposition. And here I am with my awesome bowling ball of rhetoric, and I'm about to knock down this bowling pin, right? So here is how I'm going to take this other side, represent it fairly, and then show you why, yes, they might have a point here or there. It is still not enough to outweigh my side, my stance, my position, and my argument. Okay. Um, and so if you look here, this handout actually gives you a lot more in-depth kind of an overview about how the process of coming up with a counter argument does. They even give you some sentence starters that you can use. Um, and I really like this kind of example that they give of what an argument, counter argument, and rebuttal looks like. Okay. So the argument is the primary focus in medical end of life decisions should be on patient consent rather than the doctor intention, because it is not a breach against patient's rights if she consents to the termination of their life. So the paper is arguing that terminally ill, so people who are going to die, patients should have a right to end of life care, right? That's their argument. Now, I have to anticipate a really good objection from the other side, from the opposition. So the people who are against physician-assisted death, euthanasia, like doctors being able to put patients to sleep, basically, being able to euthanize, to kill people who are terminally ill. Okay, so I need to come up with a really good argument for that. Okay, not just well, it's wrong. Okay, that's subjective. What's a really strong, solid argument? Well, this: terminally ill patients are likely to be depressed and therefore unable to consent to their death in a balanced or acceptable way. So, in other words, patients who are asking for physician-assisted death, okay, are people who are depressed typically. And so people who are not in a strong mental health space might not be mentally fit enough to make such a huge decision as I want to end my life. Okay. That's a strong argument. I actually have to think about how I'm going to respond to that. And now look at the rebuttal they give. Depression can be managed. So the rebuttal over here on the far right-hand side: depression can be managed. The relevance of depression must be made on a case-by-case basis. Depression does not warrant a general rule prohibiting patients from consenting to a hastened death. So their rebuttal is, this is a valid point. And in some situations and circumstances, it may actually be advisable to prohibit, very mentally unsound people from consenting to the, suicide, basically, like, a doctor killing me. But it must be decided on a case by case basis. And just because that somebody is sad does not necessarily mean that they are mentally unfit to make a decision. Okay. I mean, in most cases where people who are making the decision to have physician-assisted death, suicide, those people are making that choice because of a terminal illness. And terminal illnesses can make people sad, obviously. And so we can't use that as the sole criteria for deciding whether or not people should have access to this. And so that is a very sound, strong, well orchestrated counter or rebuttal to the counter argument. Okay, so I predicted the strongest argument they might come up with, and then I methodically, logically took it apart piece by piece. Okay, and so that is really the strongest way to build a counter argument. Now, your particular essay is not going to be as simplistic as this one, because you're going to provide text evidence. You're going to show me an example of, oh, here's something that they might say that this person does really well, but here is why it's not as effective as the other two. Okay, and so that's a way that you are going to build your counter argument. And then the last thing, this is just an example counter argument. Now, this is a university handout. I believe it's from Arizona State. So this handout is obviously a whole lot more in depth and than what I'm asking of you. I'm not expecting a paragraph that looks this long. If you have a page and a half counter argument paragraph, I mean, props to you. But I'm not asking for that. I'm not requiring that or mandating that. I'm just saying here is a great way to look and see how a collegiate essay conducts a counter argument. And it has helpful little bubbles here telling you what each section is doing and how this person has constructed that counter argument to be as effective as possible. So that's how to do a counter argument. If you have any questions or anything, feel free to let me know. Have a good day.